Paul,
Fab.
how's it going?
Good. Except,
Good.
oh, you unmuted my mic. Okay, sorry. I thought I was still muted. I'm very happy when I'm unmuted.
That would be the best sales podcast ever, muting the sales
Hey,
guy.
come on. First thing I want to say, Fab, is know we're in lockdown here in our crazy part of the world, and all the stores are closed, so I can't get my hair cut. So I want to apologize to all of our viewers who are subjected to my crazy hair.
Likewise.
Perfect.
We're all in the same boat.
We are. So today I'm very excited because we're going to talk about invoicing and collecting.
Yeah.
Particularly for small enterprises, I think it's something that's a little bit difficult because some people are good at delivering their services and then they kind of get in trouble when it comes to collecting and they feel bad. And I think there's some basic premises that we need to look at.
Yeah. So if I can add to that, so you proposed this idea a few days ago, I think at this point. And I was thinking, it makes sense for someone like me because it's related to a situation with me. But then I realized I thought back on my career and I'm like, sometimes, and I don't know if it's all the time, but sometimes at least, salespeople are tasked with collecting delinquent payments, right? And one of the biggest pushback that I heard from sales, obviously it was not my decision, so I was kind of had the advantage of being the fly on the wall, is how can I build rapport with a customer if now I have to act like the quote unquote bad cop and run after payments and this and that. My job is to sell. It's not my job to do this. So I never thought about it. It kind of made sense to me, but when you brought up this topic, I was like, well, is that true or is that an excuse or whatnot? So maybe start there. Is it an excuse? Should salespeople be, or could salespeople be involved in the collection process?
Well, I think it depends on the structure of the company. It really does. It really depends on how you bill, how you pay your people, how they're commissioned, how big the company is, what you can afford. But Let's assume your structure has it such that your salespeople need to collect. Well, then it is what it is, and you have to develop that. You have to develop that capacity. I know that very early in my career, I worked in a company where we had to collect. We had to do the collection. And I would say invoicing is an easy thing, right? But collecting is a little bit like overcoming an objection. When you have to call someone and ask them what's going on and why they haven't paid you or if there's a problem, you can't just say, hey, pay me, I'm going to break your legs, right? It's not the nicest thing to do.
Depending on your business, I guess.
Yeah, but the first thing you need to do is ask the question, can I just ask you when we expect when we should expect the payment? If the person's lying to you and they keep pushing you off, say, well, then we'll talk about that as well. But let's assume the person's honest. Say, hey, look, I'm having a hard month. I need you to give me a little bit of a break. Then you can decide as the service provider or product provider how you want to deal with that, right? Say, well, I also have to run my business. And we'd agreed upon this, and can you just tell me why? Can you give me something? And you'll get to a point where you'll see whether the person has the capacity and desire to pay you, or if they don't. In small businesses where you're the product, the service, the collection agency, the marketing guy, and everything, I think what's important, what I say to a lot of people, before I start a mandate, or before a lot of companies start a mandate, they'll ask for a certain amount of that up front to cover basic costs and, the worst case scenario. So I think that's important to do too. So if you're let's say working with someone and you've got to invoice them for, I'll throw it out there, $5K or $10K, well then maybe you want to make sure that you say to the person, look, I'm going to need part of that payment up front to start.
Yeah, and I mean, in my experience, it's not only small companies that do that. Any company that invoices does that, and I've dealt with. I mean, LinkedIn pops in my mind. I mean, it might not be the case, or they might not operate that way anymore. But it seemed like they wanted some upfront payment when we got started because we didn't have a credit rating with them. Like we were a new account, they have no history. So, I mean, this upfront payment is not just necessarily for small companies.
And I think it's fine. So that's one way to ensure that you, so in a case where someone doesn't want to pay you, I want to talk about that. You know, sometimes people are late. That's okay. I mean, how many big? I know large companies often will take 120 days to pay you, which is not fun, and that's why you might ask for part of the payment up front. But
Right.
you know, and I don't want to name any names, but I've even worked with large companies that could be quite delinquent in their payments. Now they did pay, but they just took a long time, and they knew that they could drag the supplier out for a long time. But there's also an approach, and this is something that's very important. I think let's talk about the tactical approach. So when you're calling someone. So you're calling someone and you're wanting to know why they didn't call you. So a lot of people say, well, we've all seen that stupid, well, not stupid, but that Hollywood film approach where, the baseball bat approach, where you're going to break your legs if you don't pay me. And listen, you're not going to get anywhere. You need to find out why the person can't pay you. Now, if they're really disappointed with your services, you can address that. You can say, so, you didn't tell me this before, but now you're telling me you're disappointed with my services or my product. Tell me more. And if there's something you can fix, then you fix it, right? If it's something that you've done wrong, then you fix that and you say, look, I'll do it, but I need payment. We need to move forward. And so you make an agreement as to how that payment's going to happen.
Right.
I think you need to be also very clear as to how you're going to charge people and what the value is. I think if you're selling value from the onset and you're delivering value and you've attached the investment of what the person's going to be investing into the value of what you're bringing forward and the value is there, then it's harder for them to say, well, I don't want to pay you. Then they become, quote unquote jerks. So I think the attitude is, I believe in what I've done, and why aren't you paying me? Now, you don't need to say it in those ways, but look, I just need to understand, when should I be expecting to pay? If they're stonewalling you or ghosting you, whatever it is, then maybe you do need to, show up at their front door and say, hey, I'm here. Just want to know, why it is you're not paying me. What's going on?
And I like that. And I think, putting myself in the shoes of those salespeople that I heard, at the beginning, like the people I was explaining early on, at the beginning of the show, I'll manage to say it, is that I don't think that's ever taught, right? Like, you always have this impression of like, oh, well, I need to send a nasty email or, or whatever. And there's no way of saying it. And just you right now saying, well, it's like an objection. Well, then you can be like, right, it is an objection. It's like maybe a post-sale objection, but that's what it is, right? They're withholding money, which is
why they're withholding the money. You need to find out, and you need to ask the questions to find out, to find out why they're holding back the money. Now, if it really gets to a point where there's, they're not paying you just because they're jerks or there's a legal disagreement, then you might have to send a nasty letter. What's a nasty letter? Well, maybe it's a lawyer's letter. Maybe it's, a letter that threatens legal action. But before you get there, find out and talk to them and see why you have disagreement. I've been in business a long time. I've had clients who've gone out of business who couldn't pay us. I've had clients who paid really late, and I've had clients who just said, we'll just tuck it under the carpet and we'll, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, make sure you're that squeaky wheel. I know that when I'm owed a payment, I find reasons to call and say, hey, look, what's going on? When do you think I should? But in a very polite manner. And I'll tell you that 99% of the time, this works. Because I feel I've delivered what I've honestly said I would deliver in my invoice and in my proposal and what we agreed to. So, unless I don't deliver, well, then there's no reason I shouldn't get paid. And I think that's the same for anybody. So let's break it down to steps. Step one, be nice, treat it like an objection, find out what's going on. Once you understand what's going on, deal with it. Is it that they don't have the money? Is it that they were unsatisfied? Is it that they want more? Is it that there was a misunderstanding? Deal with that. Once you clarify that, then make the understanding of when they're going to pay you. And then if they can't afford to pay you, then say, well, look, let's do it over a period of time. And then you might say, hey, look, you owe me that $5, $10, $20, $100,000. You can pay me over the next 3 months instead of paying me over the next, in the next 30 days, whatever. And then you go at it that way. But a lot of people fear that. You don't have to be the hard ass right away. You can be a nice person. You can lower resistance and find out why they're not paying you. Now, if they're playing you for a fool, you need to also then put your foot down and say, okay, this it's enough. I've given you new terms. You don't pay me. I'm going to take legal action. If it's worth it.
Yeah, if it gets to that. And you're right. I mean, I had a client who I think it took them a year to pay me or close to it, but they were like directly impacted by COVID. They lost like 90% of their revenue overnight. And we agreed that, I would still provide the services knowing fully well that it would take a while to get paid. But, we kept having friendly conversations. How's it going? Where are we at with this? And, it came in eventually, but, there's not much more, it would have made no sense for me to not go through with it. I was helping them recover.
And if it worked and you believed in them, that's being a real partner. That's saying, hey, I'm giving you a break. I can survive. I've got the finances. But that's an agreement. That's you sitting down with them and they told you this is the situation. So you knew that you would get paid eventually. They didn't just ghost you,
Yeah.
But for those people that ghost you and just say, I'm not going to pay you, that's where you need to, shake them up a little bit and find out. And they might feel bad that they're not paying you. Like they might, God, I'm sorry, I should have been paying you, and then put it forth. But that's I think that's the approach. Go nice, lower that objection, find out what's going on, and you know what? I think 90% of the time it works. And then 5% of the times you'll go a little deep dive a little more, and you'll realize that they might not have the funds, and then you'll deep dive even more, and you might find out they just never planned to pay you. Well, that's where you decide what you do. How do I approach this? Do I do I go after them legally, or do I just, drop it and forget about it?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to like, all these episodes that we had on sales process and whatnot with the objection. You don't steamroller over it because you end up not treating the right thing. You're focused on the money and they're focused on them not being satisfied. And you two are like on two ends of the spectrum trying to compromise, and it's never going to work. But if you're able to join them and see, then you're in a much better position.
Yeah, it is very much like a sales process. When you go down the sales process and you've talked about the issues, they've told you they want to invest, they see the upside, and then you get to the end and you say, so Mr. Klein, are you ready to go forward? And the client says, well, actually, I want to think about it. And then a lot of typical salespeople just want to bolt right through and say, but there's this and there's that and there's here and there. Mm-hmm. And then you need to go backwards and find out what it is that is holding back your client. Well, here you're at the point where, here, give me the money. You agreed, you signed, and then now they're holding back money. You need to say, okay, what's the issue? Yeah. And you might be surprised. Hey, look, the bank's foreclosed on our loan for, or investors have pulled out. I need another 2 months, or honestly, Fab, I won't be able to pay you. We're going bankrupt. Well, okay, what are we going to do? Get on the creditors list. I mean, that's a worst case scenario. Hopefully you don't have to go that route, or it doesn't go that route. But, it's just to find out and ask the questions. Go backwards. Find out what it is that is impeding the payment of your invoice. So
amazing. Paul, I know you have a hard stop, so we'll end it here. This was a short but actually very interesting episode because it is the reality of being a business owner, but also a salesperson, right? Like, you sign a great client, you're super happy, and then 6 months later, your accounting team comes to you and says, "They haven't paid us. We sent a few reminders, and they never now we need you." Well, this is the reality of sales as well in a lot of organizations.
And in a large organization, sometimes it's just disorganization. The person who is supposed to approve the payment hasn't done it yet, and it's. I'll tell you, even with the organizations I deal with that are small and medium, sometimes that happens. Oh, geez, yeah, that was on my desk. And, no CEO, no director, no owner's favorite, pastime is to sign checks.
No. And I mean, it's not even a signing check thing. Like, out of my own mea culpa, when I was a marketing leader, I had to kind of approve invoices, and I approved an invoice. It was signed. Everything was approved. And I put it on my desk, and then a whole bunch of stuff got put on top of it.
It's that simple, Fab. And often it's just not a priority. We're human beings, and companies are led by human beings. And the priorities usually go get the money, not pay the money. So you need to be this. I don't mean to say the squeaky wheel in a negative sense, but you need to make sure you're upfront and you're doing the things that are necessary to get paid. And the first step is just to ask why. You know, what's going on? What's the hesitance? And when should I expect to get paid? You know, when should we?
Yeah, same as in sales, right? You always tell me you need to not follow up, but you need to continue your prospecting, reaching out to this person 10, 15 times, not because you're being a pain in the butt, not because you're being a squeaky wheel, because people are busy, and 9 times out of 10, you're actually acting as a reminder and not an annoyance.
Well, look,
so
for our next subject of conversation, let's talk about dropping the ball on calling people back, because I can tell you there's about 10 people who've reached out to me on LinkedIn in the last month, and I can tell you that 9 of them have dropped the ball. They've just given up.
Yeah.
And some of them, I can tell you right now, 20% of them, if they call me back, they might get a sale, but they're not. They're just dropping the ball. It's like, oh, it's a little too hard. I feel like I'm being a pain, so I won't reach them back. So anyways.
There you go. Teaser for next week, people.
Okay.
Stay tuned. Same bad channel. Maybe not the same bad time. We'll see about that.
Yeah, exactly. We should have we should have those things going on.
All right. We'll do that.
Ciao,
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.